Hey, what's up guys? It's me, ThePsychNPDavidC. So depression is one of the most common mental health conditions, but it's also one of the most misunderstood. Like a lot of people will say, oh, I'm feeling depressed, but it's actually not really depression. So today I'm gonna break down the 8 main symptoms of depression using the mnemonic sticky caps and explain what they actually look like in real life. Let's talk about it. So before we get started, I just want to let everyone know this video is for educational purposes only and it's not meant to be medical advice. So let's start real quick about what depression really is. Depression is a medical condition, not just a mood. Like, sometimes people will say, oh, I failed that test yesterday, so I was depressed for like a couple hours. What they really mean is that they were sad for a couple hours, not actually depressed. 3 key features of depression are persistent low mood, anhedonia, which means you can't feel pleasure, and functional impairment, which means it gets in the way of your daily functioning. So like, for example, maybe someone who's depressed just doesn't want to get out of bed, so they don't go to work or school, and that affects their life. Okay, so now let's get into the mnemonic sticky caps. Each letter represents one main symptom of depression. These symptoms aren't always obvious. Sometimes it's really subtle, especially in high-functioning depression. So starting with the first letter, S stands for sleep. Now this can either be undersleeping or oversleeping. So starting with undersleeping, this is what is called insomnia. This can include things like difficulty falling asleep, waking up super early, having restless sleep, like just tossing and turning all night, or even having fatigue the next day, even though you got 8 hours of sleep. And then on the other side of things, we have oversleeping or hypersomnia. This can be like someone who sleeps 10 to 12 or 14 hours per day. Maybe they take excessive naps throughout the day. Sometimes people use sleep as like an escape from stress, so they'd rather just sleep than, live and deal with their problems. There's some people who say they feel tired all the time, so they might just be having a symptom of depression. Now going on to the next letter, I, which stands for interest. More specifically, lack of interest or anhedonia. So like I mentioned earlier, anhedonia means the inability to feel pleasure. For example, maybe you lose interest in a hobby you used to be like really excited about. Like maybe you used to really enjoy playing video games, but nowadays you can't feel pleasure from playing them anymore. And it can also include social withdrawal, like you don't want to go out and hang out with your friends anymore. Everything kind of just feels like meh. Even when things are going well, you're not really enjoying them. Now, this doesn't mean you're like unable to laugh or even smile. You can laugh and smile at things, but still be depressed. And moving on to the next letter G, which stands for guilt, more specifically, excessive guilt or worthlessness. This is when someone feels like they're a burden to other people, or they let everyone else down. Like maybe someone feels really guilty about themselves because they believe they're the reason why their relationship with their significant other isn't working. Or maybe someone feels really worthless because they have like a lower paying job compared to their friends who are like doctors or lawyers. The feeling is disproportionate to what the situation actually is. This symptom can be pretty subtle and hard to notice too. Like somebody who's functioning and doing well at work and school may still silently blame themselves for everything. And then moving on to the next letter E, which stands for energy, more specifically low energy or fatigue. So this is persistent physical and emotional exhaustion. This is when you find it hard to like get out of bed or start doing tasks you need to do like homework or something, or you find it hard to maintain motivation for things like going to the gym. So this is unrelated to the amount of sleep you get. You could sleep for perfectly normal hours and still feel exhausted. The way this symptom can be subtle is like maybe you're functioning at work, but the moment you get home, you just crash out and just isolate and lay in bed. And moving on to the next letter C, which stands for concentration, more specifically, poor concentration. This is when you have like difficulty focusing, maybe you forget things easily, or your thinking process is just like very slow compared to before. An example of this would be like, maybe you have to read the same paragraph over and over because you find yourself zoning out in the middle of it. Or maybe you're like missing deadlines, or you just have trouble making decisions. Now this symptom gets mistaken a lot for ADHD. A lot of people will have this symptom related to their depression, but they end up thinking they have ADHD instead. So if you're not sure which one it is, you should probably see a mental health professional like a psychiatrist or a nurse practitioner to get evaluated. And then moving on to the next letter A, which stands for appetite. So this can be either decreased appetite or increased appetite. In the case of decreased appetite, maybe you just like forget to eat sometimes. Maybe you've lost a significant amount of weight in the last like month or so, or sometimes eating food just kind of tastes like numb, so you don't really enjoy eating anyway. And on the other side of things, we have increased appetite, which I see in my patients a lot more frequently. This can be like emotional eating, Like, someone gets really stressed and then they end up just eating their stress away. They go get that tub of ice cream out of their freezer and they just end up eating like half the tub. This can also be carbohydrate cravings, which means you're eating a lot of unhealthy stuff like desserts or like french fries. And most of the time it leads to a lot of weight gain. And then moving on to the next letter P, which stands for psychomotor changes. Now this symptom I see a lot less frequently, but basically it involves like either moving slower than usually would or moving faster than usually would. So starting with what they call psychomotor retardation, that's when you're moving slower than usually would. Maybe you're speaking slower than you usually do, or there's like a lot of long pauses before you respond to something. And then on the other side of things, we have psychomotor agitation. This can involve things like restlessness, fidgetiness. Maybe you feel like you need to pace around instead of sitting still. It can kind of feel like internal tension. So yeah, this symptom isn't really as common, but it is still a symptom of depression. And moving on to the last letter S, which stands for suicidality. So this can range anywhere from like passive thoughts to active thoughts. An example of passive thoughts is like maybe you just think you'd rather just go to bed and not wake up at all. Or you'd be having thoughts like, oh, it wouldn't even matter if I just like disappeared off the face of the earth. And then active thoughts would be like if you had a plan or intent to actually act on those thoughts. And this one, a lot of people can hide well too. Like there's been a couple of friends who I've known for a long time, and then I found out later that they've had suicidal thoughts before. I'm just like, I would have never guessed that. So those are the 8 main symptoms of depression using the mnemonic Psyche caps. But now you're probably wondering, how many of those symptoms do you need to be considered depressed? So according to the DSM-5 TR, which is like a fancy handbook that we use, you need at least 5 of those symptoms lasting at least 2 weeks. A phrase they taught us in school is 2 blue weeks, so that makes it easier to remember. And one of those symptoms has to be either depressed mood or anhedonia. But yeah, not everyone has every symptom. Some people could have like 5 symptoms, other people could have all 8. But I wouldn't take this handbook thing like so seriously, to be honest. Because like maybe someone has 4 of those symptoms, but they're really severe. But then somebody goes like, well, according to the textbook, you don't have 5, so you're not depressed. So yeah, having at least 5 of those symptoms to be considered depressed is just a textbook thing. Now let's go into what depression is not. It's not just sadness. It's not weakness. It's not burnout. It's not attention seeking. And it's not something you can just like snap out of. You know how some people, when they hear that somebody is depressed, they're just like, just get over it? Yeah, that's not actually how it works. So if you're watching this and you feel like you might be depressed, just remember you're not alone. Depression is treatable and there is help available. Do you have any experiences with these symptoms? Let me know in the comments down below. If you found this video helpful, make sure to like and subscribe. I am also on TikTok and Instagram if you want to follow me over there at ThePsychNPDavidC. And with that, your mental health just leveled up. You're welcome.